Guys, you know why I love doing this show? It's because I get to meet so many amazing people, and today's guest is no exception. He is a two-time national champion for the Nebraska Cornhusker football program and a Super Bowl champion for the Denver Broncos. I am talking about Tony Veland. Tony Veland, the Director of Development for the University of Nebraska Foundation, is an Omaha native who is known for his past accomplishments in the sports arena as a former Nebraska Cornhusker and Denver Bronco. As a two-time national champion and a Super Bowl champion, he's experienced success at the highest levels, and he loves to use his platform to encourage the next generation to be successful in life beyond the areas of athletics. He's also an advocate for the community as he serves on numerous nonprofit boards trying to impact positive, lasting change for those in his community. First time I've ever had a national champion and a Super Bowl champion on the show. I am stoked. I met Tony a few years back. We actually sat on a panel for a tech conference where we were getting to impart a little bit of wisdom to some of the high schoolers that were in attendance for that conference about technology and tech as a potential career path, what business ownership and entrepreneurship opened as far as opportunities. It was such a blast. But I really was just enamored with Tony. He has one of the most approachable personalities, one of the nicest guys, no ego whatsoever, and just an all around great individual to be around. So I'm so grateful that we finally put this together where we could get him on the Ripple Effect podcast because I've got so many questions. I'm a little bit nervous. I mean, he is a champion on the highest order. And I'm just so grateful that he is spending a little bit of time with us to dig in, do a little rippling. So with no further ado, let's get into conversation with Tony Veland. Well, Tony, welcome to the Ripple Effect podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good, man. It's really good to see you. How are things with
It
you?
it's good to see you, and things are going great. It's been I can't believe you look up and it's almost been 2 years since we saw each other at the
Right.
HCC conference. So, and looks
Exactly.
like you've had some changes since the last time I saw you too, huh?
I did. I did. I'm no longer with the AIM Institute. I made a move to the University of Nebraska Foundation. So, still in the education area, focusing on raising funds for the College of Engineering. So, still staying in that STEM area, but kind of going back home to my alma mater.
I love that. What was it that prompted you to go back and do this kind of work?
Well, to be honest with you, it wasn't like it's something I was looking for. My supervisor ended up, and they were looking for someone in the director's field and the development field. And I think just because I'd been in this area, I was a former, engineering grad. UNL's an alum, so obviously I feel extremely strongly about what's going on down there. I think it just kind of made a match, and so they came looking and wasn't necessarily looking to leave, but they gave a pretty good pitch, and I was like, oh, let's make this move.
Oh, that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
can you give us a little kind of an idea of what you do day to day in terms of your current work responsibilities?
Yeah, so I'm the director of development for the College of Engineering for the foundation, and so in essence, what we're trying to do is meet with former alumni and former supporters to continue that support. We're trying to get more people to get into this field. We're trying to make it cheaper for students to get there by providing for scholarships, and we're also trying to provide access. So the same thing that I was doing at AIM was trying to get people into the STEM fields. I'm doing
Yep.
the same here, but specifically for engineering. And we have a lot of support for Nebraska in general. There's a lot of support for the field of engineering just because it has such an impact on economic development in this area. Also, it's been a great move, and I've had a chance to meet quite a few people within the industry just because of it.
I love that. Well, when you and I met at the HTC conference, that was my first time to Omaha, and
Yeah.
I was completely blown away by the amount of enthusiasm and momentum that's happening in Nebraska in the technology arena. Can you share a little bit about what you've seen, how that's evolved over the last couple of years, and maybe what's got you most excited as you're navigating into this new role?
Well, it's been interesting. I'll say even though I was an engineering grad. I was never really in the tech field or really used my degree, but being in this particular field, I mean, you understand, I mean, you just look at everyday um, you know things that are going on. Technology is moving fast, right?
It is.
It's moving extremely fast, and we can either get on board or we're going to get passed up or run by, right? And so I've kind of seen this movement, which is one of the reasons that I joined AIM in the first place, 7 years ago, because I saw, an area where, um, if you aren't getting involved, you're going to be left behind. And obviously,
Yeah.
I've always been a big proponent of community first and trying to make sure that the people who are around me had opportunities to be successful. And I think I shared this with you in the past. My background has always been sports.
Yeah.
So having the football background, I can go to talk to kids till I'm blue in the face about practices and working hard and doing all that stuff. But when it kind of came down to it for me was that I felt like I was only talking to a select few students because there was only a few kids who were going to be able to get scholarships. There was maybe,
Sure. Sure.
one or two out of 1,000 kids that I, would talk to would go to the NFL, right? But
Yeah.
everybody can be affected by tech. Kids are playing video games, they got their cell phones out, they got the social media stuff. People are starting all kinds of businesses now from the internet. So I felt this would be a better way to kind of reach kids and give them an opportunity to be successful. And so that's the reason why I jumped in. But the thing is, that is really affecting everything, right? And companies are becoming more technical. They're understanding that if they don't have kids or youth that have those types of skills, and that they're not going to be proficient long term. So it's just been kind of a movement. Over this last,
Yeah.
especially after COVID, it's just been really kind of a movement, and people are really making moves towards it. And so, I saw the excitement with that, and I wanted to be a part of it because, again, I want to allow my community to rise. And if I can open doors and create more access to them being successful long term, that's what I wanted to do.
Let's go back a little bit. So what was it about engineering when you were coming into your, your college years that was kind of the area that you decided to focus on? Obviously, we're going to touch on your sports background because it's very, very impressive. But obviously, from an education perspective, that's a pretty hard track to tackle. So what was it that led you down that path?
But it is. I think what started it was I was good in science and math. I think that's kind of what started it. And then I was involved in this group that was called MCASA when I was in high school.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the actual acronym stood for, but it was something, minorities and engineering type situation.
Yep.
And so we met a few times, and some of the things that they were doing were interesting. And then we took a tour down to K State, and I got in front of a number of professors, and they were kind of just talking about the things that were happening. Then I remember being in this robotics club type thing, and so I was just excited. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this makes sense. I think I can see myself doing this long term, and I knew it wasn't something that was easy, but I wasn't about taking the easy path at that particular time, and I was trying to make sure that I was doing something that would be beneficial to society long term, something that I could grow from and learn from, and that's just what I was about. So I decided to jump in with both feet, and I got down to college, and I was like, okay, I understand the struggle now. The struggle is real, and
It
these
was no
classes,
lie, right?
the struggle is real, and it was a challenge. It was a big challenge. Because playing football, you only have so much time in a day, right?
Yeah.
Half of the day is for classes, and half of your day is almost for football. And so, I'm not with the rank and file as far as getting tutors and having study sessions. There was about maybe five or six of us that was in the football department that were actually doing engineering things as well, and some of those were in different parts of engineering. So, only two of those that I could actually go with and ask questions for. So that made it kind of difficult as well. But I still wanted to do it, and I did it. And I got in there for about 3 years before I decided that I wanted to change and do something a little bit different. I got 3 years into engineering, and then I did a discipline of business.
Okay.
So I graduated with an interdisciplinary degree, and it worked out well for me. Even though I never used my engineering degree formally, it actually worked out well for me.
I mean, what so the area of interest for you that kind of stoked that curiosity and that fire, even though, you sort of made the shift towards the end, how does that inform how you work with people that are maybe considering technology as a direction for their career path now, or trying to incentivize people to want to come to the University of Nebraska now to learn about the great programs they have? Can you take some of that and apply that to amp up people's excitement for their own journey ahead?
Well, when it comes down to it, I talk about the opportunity.
Yep.
There's a huge shortage of, people in those fields, especially in this particular area. We need, if I'm not mistaken, the numbers we were trying to create like 5 or 10,000 more, engineers in this area, in this locale specifically,
Wow.
right? And we're fortunate to have some really good, engineering firms and construction management firms that really believe wholeheartedly, and bringing along people within the state, right? And so, case in point, you got a Kiwa that does a lot of hiring from here. You have an HDR, yeah, companies like that who really want to provide opportunities for people here to learn and build and grow and give back to the community that they actually were raised in. And so when you have that kind of support and you have the opportunity, why not marry the two, right? Plus you're
Yeah,
staying
of
home
course.
and you're building your community, you're building the businesses. So it just creates kind of this win-win scenario. And so I'm not trying to ever, force anybody to do something that they don't want to do, but I do want to let them know that if there's a great opportunity in an industry that is stable, that is growing, why not look at that industry, especially when
A
it's being supported by the local industries.
Absolutely, and just the numbers that you just shared, I mean, that's a significant potential job opportunity for that area.
Exactly.
What can you tell us about just Nebraska and the movement that's happening to capture more of those large institutional type owners that are focused on bringing tech to, the Midwest?
Well, I mean, I think if you can just look at, kind of the history of what's been going on, probably the last decade. I mean, you've got companies like, Facebook or some Meta, Amazon, PayPal. You've got companies who are moving here and they're moving here for a reason, right? I mean, it's better from an economic standpoint. You have, the work ethic here. You're in the middle of the city, so it makes it easy to travel nationally and that type of thing. So and we're getting a lot more attention and notoriety, for cost of living, how things are going here. And so if you really paid attention, there's been a huge move towards the Midwest, right? And we're kind of in charge with that, right? And so, and if you're seeing that and you're a worker, you're like, okay, something is going on about Omaha that I might not have known in the past.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I should think about this. The other part of it is, you have somebody that might be in New York, may be in Florida, might be in Texas. Well, their cost of living are pretty high.
yeah.
you can come here, and your dollar can go a heck of a lot farther,
Yeah, yep.
in some of those places there. And so, again, I think it just creates, a great opportunity to, take advantage of a growing field, and also, be in a place where I think that good life, moniker is actually real. I
Yeah.
think it's said about Midwestern people, Midwestern values, and I think people would relish that, being a part of that.
Well, I have to say, I get to travel around all over the country, and being in Omaha for about 2.5 days, I have to say those were the nicest people. The entire community was just so great, and the event was fantastic. But even the side conversations for folks that I knew had not grown up in Omaha. I asked them, why do you stay? Why do you like it? And everybody talks about, the family feel that it's a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to build your community. And, folks are like, I can't see myself, having now experienced this going anywhere else because it's just such a welcoming community. And no matter what you're trying to accomplish or what you want to do for your career, it's just a good spot to do it.
And trust me, it just grows on people. Like I always go
Yeah.
back to my football days. My first year here, you got all these guys that are from California and Texas and Florida, and they hate it here. They like why did I make this? Is the dumbest move that I've ever done. Right? This is stupid. But I'll tell you to a T. Um, by the time we graduated, I'm going to
Yep.
say probably 80% of those people stayed, right? Because
Yeah.
it just grew on them, right? It was
That
just
says a
something
lot.
about it that I love I love home, but I'm going to stay here. I'm going to make this my new home, and I think it just grows on anybody that comes here. It's kind of a hidden gem that you realize once you spend some time here.
I love that. And but you grew up in Nebraska, right? So
Yeah,
was that
home,
yep.
Omaha is home.
So did you
Omaha.
always know that you wanted to go to the University of Nebraska, or were you considering other programs or
I no, I didn't know that initially.
okay.
You know, I really wanted to go to Stanford. I also thought about going to Colorado. I know that's kind of crazy to say, but at that time, at that particular time, I'd gotten a couple of letters from them, and there was some interest there. Um, and then, and I had some interest in other places as well. But I really wasn't thinking about Nebraska because I wasn't like I would watch football like as a kid, and
Yeah.
my dad would watch as well. And my dad was an avid Oklahoma fan,
Okay.
so back in the day, the Oklahoma and Nebraska rivalry, we'd have that big game going on,
That's
and
big, yeah.
yeah, it's huge. And my dad was always like Boomer Sooner, and under my breath, I'm like Go Big Red, that type of thing. So it was kind of that flavor. But I didn't find out. I didn't realize that I really wanted to go until I went to a football camp my junior year. um, I went down there, and it was the first time I had actually, performed against kids out of state. It was the first time I'd ever really been at a football camp. I did, pretty well, and it was just a great feel. I got offered, that particular time, and I was just like, these guys are winning, 9 to 10 games every single year. It's at home. It's close. My,
Yeah.
my mom and dad could come here. It would be stupid not to go here,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it turned out honestly, that was probably one of the best decisions that I've ever made.
So you were there. So you won 2 national championships, which congratulations. That's so
Thank you.
freaking awesome.
Thank you.
Those were with Tom Osborne as your head
Correct.
coach, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So
Yes.
what can you tell us a little bit about what that was like to be coached by him? I mean, he's a legendary football coach for sure.
Well, it was amazing. Like for me, it was amazing. He was just one of those guys where, he just had this presence about him, this aura, and it's kind of hard to describe. You don't. I had never met him, before he come into, pretty much my living room, and he's trying to, get me to come down there. But it's like he walks in, and you're just like, I can trust this guy. It's
Yeah.
just something about him. I can trust him, and he's just one of those people that, I don't think that I could have had a coach have a stronger impact on me, during my life at that particular time. To be able to go down there and have somewhat of a father figure and someone who, his name from a football standpoint speaks for itself. But I think anybody that is around him understands that his integrity, his character, all that is far and above greater than what he's accomplished at football. When something happens to Coach Osborne, this state will probably shut down for a while because he has that type of impact. But he was just great because he cared more about the man than he did about the football player, and that
Uh,
was evident. And how he ran the program. It was evident in him having coaches that had been there, 20 years plus.
yeah.
They weren't making crazy money, but everybody was completely bought into the program. And it says a lot when you can have a man take over a program. And like during this program, again, we're winning, 10, 11, 12 games, 10, 11 games almost every year. We're in the conference championship, almost, or division championship almost every year, but you can still rally people enough to say that's not enough. Like we've got to be, it's like we've got to go for that higher level. And so, he was able to do that, and I was just completely and totally blessed just to be around him, for the time that I was.
Is there, a lesson or a piece of advice that he gave you that resonates and sort of helps guide how you lead today in your own right?
I just think, when it's all said and done, he was just about the man, being more about the man,
Yeah.
and also giving second chances. I think if anything stands out more than, well, there's two things to me that stand out. Uh, Number one is that, he cares so much that he remembers all the details about people. he's had, I don't know how many hundreds of football players. I can't tell you one time that I've ever been around a player where he didn't know the player's name, he didn't know the mother's name, a brother or sister, in some integral detail about them, right? That just says a lot about who you are. The other thing is, I always go back to, there were always, a few off the field issues that were going on within the place, right? And it would be very easy for him to, just, kick a person out of the program, not bring any, craziness to him, or, but he wasn't like that. He was about second chances all the time. He was about, I'm here to help kids and try to make them grow, try to make them become better people. And I will always, more than anything else, always remember him more for, how he handled, the Lawrence Phillips situation and Scotty Baldwin situation,
Yeah.
because he was like, okay, I may take it on the chin for this, but I'm going to do what I can to try to give them the best opportunity at a successful life after football. And so that always stood out for me.
Uh, I have a good friend when he left Nebraska, he had a small stint at Ohio University, right? As coach, was advising, I think ended up becoming their athletic director. I may be wrong on that part, but the person that I know here in Austin that was actually responsible for the alumni that went to, seek him out and try to get him to come over as to their program, they made that same comment when they talked to him. It was amazing how much time and energy he had put in to get to know everybody he was meeting with, get the background and history, and then why they were passionate about their program, right? What was it about their university that they were excited about? And rather than them interviewing him, it almost felt like the opposite, right? He was really trying to get them to help him understand why they would care, why it was important to them for him to maybe consider it as a program. And so I had
Right.
mentioned that I was going to be interviewing one of his former players, and she just said, it's almost exactly like you did. One of the nicest guys that just carried himself, had a presence that was really so significant.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
awesome. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have that presence too. Let me tell you, my man. I was
Well,
telling
I
in your
appreciate
intro,
that.
like you're when we were on that panel, I was just so enamored, not because it would be easy to kind of be a fanboy, right? Because you're a two-time national champion, you won a Super Bowl, you have this aura as this professional athlete. But the thing that I looked at was not any of that, although I'm very, very impressed with that. And we'll dig into that a little bit more. But at the end of the day, you were just one of the nicest, most grounded individuals that I could possibly ever hope to meet. We only talked for a little bit, but I liked how I watched you interact with almost everybody, but especially the kids that had questions, after our panel that came up and talked to you, and just how you made the time for them and just got down on their level, and you could see stimulated them to think about where they could go and what the possibilities out there were, which is an absolute gift.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. But it's all because I remember being those kids, you
Yeah,
know,
yep.
and I come from a neighborhood where, um, seemingly it doesn't just seem like there's a lot of opportunity out of, right? And so, there were times when, maybe I felt like I don't know what my future looks like. I don't see a lot of positivity. How can I make it out? Those type of situations. And so, I always wanted to be a person that people could look to, provide encouragement, provide help, and always say like, yeah, okay, I have these championships. That's great. I'm no better than you. I came from the
Yeah,
same place as you. If you want to go to those areas, I can try to help you get there. You will never look at me and be like, okay, he doesn't care. He doesn't want to, give a helping hand. I care for everybody. Not just people who look like me. I care for everybody, and I want people to come together to make this work because I truly feel, and I believe this in my heart. I truly feel we were all put on this earth to help each other, right?
yep,
Not just to help somebody that looks like me, to help each other. And if we could ever get past all the things that aren't similar,
yeah,
we accomplish so much more, right?
yeah.
So that's just how I feel. And so when I get a chance to talk to kids, I mean, that's that just lights my heart, and I just want to do whatever I can to help.
I love it because I think the lessons that you're teaching, especially to our youth, that when you can look beyond all of the other BS that's out there, and
Right,
there's a ton
right,
of it, right?
right.
If you can just help them understand that, it doesn't matter, race, religion, background,
Right.
experience. If you can just look at another human being and you can connect on that heart to heart, belly to belly kind of connection, you really do something significant. You can change your perspective. You can change, you know, you can change a lot in this world just by treating people with, respect and dignity.
Right. Exactly.
I love that. I love that. What do you think? Is like the biggest challenge, as you look at this next generation that's coming up, and you're obviously trying to, attract them to the University of Nebraska and eventually tie that back into the employers that will benefit from that future workforce. But, what do you think the biggest challenges are between companies today aligning with, the up and coming workforce, the way that, the generational change that's, sort of, thrust upon us because of this different kind of mindset in terms of the youth movement. What do you see as the biggest areas of opportunity or the biggest challenges for them to, to address or overcome?
I think we kind of have, and I hate to say it because I know I sound old when I say this, but this little bit of an entitled, youth, right?
Yep.
Where back in the day is, you worked extremely hard, you put in all the hours, and gradually you climb the ladder, and that sometimes it takes time to do that. Well, right or wrong, we have a youth that's not what they cater to, right? They're
Yeah.
trying to climb the ladder fast, um, and they may not have a really developed work ethic, type
Yep.
situation, and so how can companies still be able to attract these kids and still be able to create an environment or a work environment that they can thrive at, but also learn old cultures that or old values that will allow the company to still grow, the way they want to, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's hard because you're connected with a different with people who have things that are different that are they have different values, right? And you have to find a
Yep.
way to connect that. Then you have this changing technology environment that's changing all the time. How do you get them involved with that as well? The whole remote work and going back to work in office now, you have to bring all
Yeah.
that in now. So I don't envy, some of these employers right now because it's it's
Oh yeah.
not a lot of fun. But when it comes down to it, you still have to find a way to connect to people. You still need those people to be able to provide the services that you're trying to provide. You know, for businesses and communities and those type of things. And the youth still need to be able to figure out a way to gain gainful work experience. So they each got to have to find a way to come together, right?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I think that's a great opportunity for both because this world continues to change. It continues to
Yeah.
evolve. So as you have some of these people who are kind of in the middle, who they recognize the changes that are going on, they recognize the changes that are happening in technology, and they're gaining leadership within these organizations. It allows them to say, you know, here's a way that you can connect with the company. It allows them to go to the company and say, here's a better way for you to connect with these youth so that we can find this mesh too, so that we can all ties can rise, right? So I think that's probably in my opinion, the tougher thing because that's a lot of things that you hear right now within industry is these kids don't work as hard. Their expectations sometimes are a little higher than they should, a little loftier than they should be. But at the same time, you know, it's better to have somebody who feels like they can accomplish the world, right?
Yeah.
And trying to make that happen within the confines of your environment, as opposed to somebody who doesn't want to work hard and don't and won't doesn't want to accomplish anything big. So I think there's some opportunity there for them to do that, but again, I don't envy
Yeah, well, you touched on at the very beginning, though. None of that works unless you have the ability to connect with one another and find a way to communicate on
them.
each other's level, right? And
Yeah,
that's kind of key. And I think that you do have a generation that's coming in with loftier expectations. They also are oddly defining their success, not necessarily in a monetary or title role kind of basis. It's in work that they find, satisfying, and that they feel like there is a purpose behind what they do. And then you have organizations that are kind of like, yeah, well, this is kind of the way we've always done it. And, that you got to come into that situation with someone that can basically help, that conversation adapt, because there is a meeting of the minds that can happen if you're forward thinking. I just think a lot of companies, especially right now, aren't, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater without thinking through, like, how do I leverage this and turn a negative into a positive, or maybe something that maybe is maybe a misunderstanding or a mis set of expectations. How do we level set those so that we can both find a way path forward for success?
And I think one thing that can really be a really good opportunity is that these kids expect more success. Well, that means they need to be more productive quicker. And if they're
Yeah.
doing that, then they have to prepare themselves in order to be able to do that. And then also it puts it on the company to say, how can we make these kids learn this faster, right?
Yeah.
So that change in itself, because that's always been a problem as well long term, is that you bring in somebody, whether it's from college or from an internship, and they're like, well, it's taking them 2 years to be productive. How can we make that shorter, right? So it forces both sides of the equation to meet in the middle and make that happen.
You kind of, I'm gonna use the analogy because it's one I know you're comfortable with, and certainly I think a lot of people out there would see. But you come from the generation of football players. You went into the pros, and with the Denver Broncos, won a Super Bowl, which is just phenomenal. I think that is so awesome. But that was a time when players would be drafted, and they would come and they would sit behind a player for a year or two. They weren't just thrust into the starting role right away. And you see the difference between the culture of the NFL back then in the mid 90s to where it is today, where now they expect these rookies to like hit the ground running. And you're talking about a completely different culture, a completely different work environment, and the speed of the game is significant than what a lot of college players are accustomed to. So it's kind of an interesting kind of analogy to the work environment we have, in that the expectations are higher, and the need for performance is almost required quicker than it ever has been. Do you kind of see that same kind of mindset now in terms of the game as it kind of overlays to the business world?
It's exactly like that now. And as a matter of fact, college is like that now.
Yeah,
College wasn't like that.
that's true. Yeah.
College wasn't like that in the past. In the past, it was more like, what you talked about. We're going down there, and mind you, let's say we have, 15 people coming in a recruiting class. You've got one or two of those guys that may get a look as a freshman. Everybody else, they're either going to redshirt or they're going to be sitting on the bench, waiting for the next 2 years, developing their bodies, learning about the playbook, or kind of biding their time so that once they hit the field, they're ready to play. That's not quite the case anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because of transfer portal things, whatever the case may be, they're expected to be ready now, and so that's exactly how it is in kind of industry, right? That they don't necessarily want to wait as long. They want you to make some significant strides, right as you start, or there's other people that they can find to actually take your place, and so and whether right or wrong, that's just kind of the way of the world now. So that's a crazy transition to have, especially from a football standpoint, because you need to. It does take some time to kind of develop yourself, but from an industry standpoint, it is something that you have to do, because studies are starting to show that people who change jobs more frequently, more often, end up making more money long term. But
Hmm.
in order to be able to do that, you have to show some proficiency to do that as well. So you got to be
Yeah.
prepared for it. So it's interesting what's going on both sides, but I'm here for it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a statistic the other day because I think you and I are separated by just a few years. But when our generation was coming up and graduating college, you were kind of expected to, like, maybe at max make five total job changes in your entire career, because you would probably have a 10 to 15-year run with a company or two, and then some smaller stints with others. But for the vast majority, it was pretty unheard of to have many more jobs than that, let alone changing industry. Whereas now, kids that are graduating from the university, let's say at 22 or 24 years old, they're coming out and they will have 5 to 8 jobs before they hit 30.
Right.
It's like that, and you think about that, and it's like in like you said with that statistic, those that are actually changing, they're and a lot of times they're changing because they're hiring up, right? They're getting better roles and leveling up their career path. But that whole shift in the, sort of the direction and overall, sort of your career longevity that I think we had, that's almost out the window now because, I talked to somebody we were interviewing for my software company. I interviewed somebody and she's probably like mid 30s and she's had like 20 jobs since she graduated. And you would normally have looked at that and been like, oh my God, you can't keep a job. But she had an explanation for every single one as to why it became a better role and opportunity or why she got recruited from this one to this one. But it was like a 3-page resume. And I was like, oh, wow.
Right.
But
Right.
it was just interesting, and that's kind of the culture we have now.
It is, and sometimes I'm not sure like how I feel about it because I think there's two sides. There's one side of it that's okay. I'm trying to make sure that I can continue to be successful and continue to grow. And
Yep.
if that means that I'm at a place only for a year, then that's the case. But I still have a heart for those individuals who are loyal to companies that give them an opportunity, who are loyal to good atmospheres and cultures and that type of things. And it kind of reminds me of how things are changing a little bit in college football. Like back in the day, you kind of play for the the name on the front of your jersey, and now everything is the name on the back, right? And that's there's some
What
give
do
and
you
take
think
with that,
about that? I'm really
but
curious
I
about
don't.
it.
It's really such a catch-22 because if I'm not playing, and I'll say this for my team, in my opinion, if we're not playing for the name, for the Nebraska program, for that tradition, we're not winning
Yep.
that championship. Like we're not winning. I think it's really hard to come together and accomplish something big when it's all about individualistic type things.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? And so I think that's going to take away quite a bit from, the loyalty and traditions of college football in itself. And I hate to say it, I think it might, lower a little bit of the product, that's being put out right there. So I don't like that. But at the same time, like I do understand, especially when you come from nothing and now you have a chance to, you
Yeah.
know, play for a university and actually make money now. I mean, I can't fault a kid for, trying to make some finance to, help himself and his family right away because nobody's guaranteed to, have those opportunities long term, right? And
Yep.
so, but I again, I feel the same as far as the corporate world because you know you're taking care of you're taking care of your family, and if you're doing things that are going to set you up long term to be able to accomplish your dreams, then I can't fault people for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you when you went into the NFL, what was it that most surprised you about, you got drafted by the Denver Broncos and you went from one great coach to what I got to think is probably another great coach with Mike Shanahan at the time. And you had, I mean, you're on a team with John Elway, with, the guy that just exudes leadership. What was that like coming into a program like that after, I mean, you had to be, hot stuff coming in because you were coming off of 2 national championships. I mean, a highly touted rookie. I mean, they probably they were probably really excited to have you join the program. But what was the difference when you went from, college to the pros? What did that feel like?
Um, Bottom of the totem pole again. That's that's what it felt like. I went there and I was in
You
awe
mean
of
those
some of
national
the.
championships didn't get you out of rookie hazing or anything? I mean,
Nah, nope, none of that. None of that. And mind you, I'm going to Colorado, right? They don't have any
yep.
love for Nebraska
Yeah,
there,
it's
so
true. That's right.
I'll tell you, I do remember when we had won our Super Bowl championship, we had one of the celebrations at the owner's house, Pat Bowman's house.
Yeah.
And, we went in there, and for some reason, I just thought I was going to show off a little bit because we had a couple of Colorado guys, and they had their rings on. So I thought, let me go ahead and put my 5 rings on, my 7 rings on, and just bling it out a little bit for these guys. they didn't appreciate that, but I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty funny. But no, it was a great time. What was different was just the speed of the game, and the fact that when you're playing in college, your margin of error can be this big, and you can still be successful. You can still make plays and have a chance to go to the next level. In the league, your margin there is this small. It's really small, and the game you really learn that the game is so much more mental than it is physical when you get to that level. Because everybody's a good athlete. Everybody was a baller back in the day, but it's really about number one, can I learn the playbook? I have to learn the playbook better in the back of my hand. Number two, can I deal with the everyday ups and downs? I'm going to get yelled at by coaches. I'm going to be going up against people who are, eventual Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
This may not go as fast as I want it to go, and I had never really been that much of a bench warmer. Can I, be comfortable with doing that while I'm, trying to get on the field? And it's just a lot of uncertainty, and not having that job stability, like that can wear on you. Like it can really wear on you. So it was a lot more mental than anything else. But when it came down to it, the same process that got me, on the field at Nebraska was the same thing that, helped me there. It was just like trust the process, work your butt off, be coachable, be a good teammate, believe in yourself, all those type of things. And then what helped me even more was I'm in a locker room with, you know, again, Hall of Fame guys, but their egos were cool. Like
Yeah.
John was cool. He got along with everybody. I'm there with
Yep.
Shannon Sharp. You see Shannon Sharp now.
Yep.
He's blown up. He's big, and he talking the same way he is. Now
Yep.
that's the same way he was back there. He talked a lot of crap, but he was just cool. He
Yep.
was just cool, and so the locker room was cool, and I was behind Steve Atwater, who was the consummate
Oh man.
professional man.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer, great guy. He wasn't he was trying to help me, even though I'm trying to take his position at some point. He's still trying to help me. So we had that type of environment, and it made it great being there.
Yeah, I mean that those 2 years when they got the Super Bowls, I mean, those were like, it was finally get the monkey off
Yeah,
of Elway's back, right?
right,
And win
right.
it. And then just you could see that team was ready to, take the next step. And even
Yep,
though, obviously with Elway retiring after the second one, I think in 98, it's like, he'd done everything he needed to do, but you could sense the camaraderie on that squad without question. To beat Holmgren and Favre in the Super Bowl. I
yeah,
mean, it doesn't get any better than that, right?
exactly. That was a great way to end it, and um, we were underdogs. I think it was 14-point underdogs or something like that.
Yeah, yeah,
We're in the Super Bowl, like really 14
yeah.
points. Okay. So to be there and to cause a fumble in the play, like it to have a little bit of an impact on the game, that was really amazing.
Not a little. You had a large impact on that game. So
I
I
appreciate
think
it.
I think if anybody goes and checks out your highlight reel on YouTube and just sees the the hits that you made, I would not have ever wanted to be on the field with you ever.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate that.
I was telling people in your intro, like you still look like you could go out there and play. Do you miss the game? Yeah, being as in good a shape as you are right now.
You know what? I don't miss the game that much because I'm 51 now. Well, actually 52
Yeah.
tomorrow, which is crazy.
Oh, happy
Um,
birthday! Oh,
Thank
that's
you. I
awesome.
appreciate that. Appreciate that. So I don't have these delusions that I can still play the game anymore. So I'm not worried about that. But I really miss being athletic. I
Yeah,
miss just being able to get up and run. And the other thing, which is the biggest thing, I miss camaraderie. Like you miss the guys.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
that's really what you miss. So
Well, I noticed for a while you were into coaching. Was that not a path that you really wanted to explore going forward, or
yeah, so I did coaching. I coached from I think it was '03 or '04 to like 12, if I'm not mistaken. I coached for a semi-pro team here, the Omaha Beef, for about 8 years, and then I did 4 years in high school ball, and then I got involved with a group called Warren Academy, where we provide position-specific training for guys that are trying to go to the next level in football. So I still do that. So that gives me my football fix, with the training, and then we also do 7-on-7 things, which is really cool. So that's in essence how I kind of stay around football, and I figured. If I played, it would be stupid for me to completely walk away and not, try to pass this knowledge on to some of the kids that are actually out there. But yeah, I still do that. It's still fun. Matter of fact, we had a 7-on-7 tournament out in Kansas City this past weekend, and our top team won the tournament. So
Oh,
pat
awesome.
myself on the back there. I'm
Yeah.
happy about that. So
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you, appreciate it. But no, it's amazing. We're at this point where um, even Nebraska and some of the other colleges are paying attention to the talent that we're helping to produce, and
That's
so
great.
like, yeah, if I can help some of these kids get to college and get scholarships and possible nil money, man, that's amazing. 'Cause that's what it's all about. So
Oh, that's great. I mean, talk
yeah.
about a positive ripple you're creating for so many out there. That's awesome. Well, I
Mhm.
could talk to you all day. I want to be respectful of your time. I always like to finish these interviews up with a few ripple connection questions if you're cool with it.
Okay, no problem.
What is one lesson that you learned in football that you use to this day in your business life?
A lesson that I learned in football is really to conquer adversity. Like that's really what it comes down to. Conquer adversity. I never knew who I was going to necessarily. Never had control of who I was going to be lined up against. Right, but the goal was always going to still be the same. And everybody can have excuses for why you don't accomplish that goal. You can either let the situation, control you, or you can create your own fate. And
Oh,
so that particular piece of it for me has always resonated. And a lot of times when I go talk to kids, it's always about here's the goal. You got to figure out a way to make it there. And so that's what I tell them.
I love it. I love it. What did the 7-year-old Tony want to be when he grew up?
That's that's interesting. Honestly, probably an NFL player.
Okay.
I don't remember any other occupation, and I just remember like at that time I didn't really watch college football as much, and so the way that I really bonded with my uncles and my dad and everybody, we were all watching NFL football. And so luckily for me, it came true.
What was your team growing up that you rooted for?
So I had a couple of teams back then, and for some reason I like Detroit, and I like
Okay.
Detroit just because I used to like the blue and silver when I was a kid. I just liked the
Yep.
colors, but I also loved like Billy Sims and Barry Sanders, and those are my guys. I like the Bears back then too. So it was just Walter Payton, Barry Sanders. Those were like two of my biggest idols as a
Yep.
kid, and so I had to like the Bears and Detroit, even though they were in the same conference and fighting each other. So,
That's like room for the Yankees and the Red Sox.
right, right, a little bit, yeah, a little bit. So
If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing for a career if you could choose any career path?
um, that's a good question. I think I would probably still be in the philanthropy area. Um, I love just being able to help people and give back. And if I would love to be, that person on the other side of kind of what I do, right? If I
Yeah.
was, extremely, successful and I'm able to, bless people all over the world, like I would love, to be able to do that because I think there are so many people and causes that are doing amazing things, but they don't have the resources to, truly fulfill their mission. And I would love to be able to provide that for them.
I love that. That's great.
Mhm.
If you could put up a message on a billboard that every kid, would have to see on the way to school or on the way home or anybody going to work, coming home, what bit of inspiration or what message would you put on that billboard?
Um, Something along the lines of "You're never alone." Like you don't have to do anything by yourself, right? I think that's one thing that especially coming from the whole COVID thing, where people were isolated, they couldn't talk to people, and how it really affected people. I think people just need to take that perception and that belief long term that we're here to help each other, right? And then if I have a huge goal, I don't need to do that by myself. reach out to people because there's so many people out here that are willing to help you. Even if they don't
Yeah,
really know how, they know how to. They want to connect you to somebody to help you accomplish whatever goal it is.
that's
And I've
right.
been on some amazing teams, some amazing football teams and work teams. And when it's all said and done, when you're around people who care, anything is possible, right? Anything is possible. And so when I talk to kids, a lot of times I'm like, create your own team, right? Find a team, get a
Yep.
mentor, a teacher, get a friend, get a coach, all those people that can sow into your life and help you accomplish your goals. So just let them know you're not alone. Create your own team, and anything can be possible.
I love that. So just out of curiosity, is there any one person that sticks out to you that was sort of stepped up to be part of your team to help you become the person that you are that, just really, when you think about made a indelible mark on your life, is there one person that stands out to you?
Besides Coach Osborne, I would probably say Coach Lonnie Tapp. That was my high school football coach,
Nice.
and the reason for that was, I was, he's a football coach, but I would see him, going to get kids to pick them up to go to school, to take them home. He had players that were actually living with them because they actually needed it. We were at a high school where, we won, two games my freshman year, two games my sophomore year. So we weren't a team that was doing well. He had been working there for a lot of years, and he took a lot of flack, but he didn't care because he was about the growth of those kids, right? He
That's
was
awesome.
just about those kids. And so when I see that, I mean, he was just, he was all bought in, and he believed in me. But he was just a great man, and I just took from that, and I'm like, well, if I have a chance to give back to the community in any way, I'm going to do that because of him.
I love that. Is he still coaching?
Yeah, no, he stopped coaching 2 years ago. He was with Benson, and then he had left, and then he was coaching for North for a number of years. So, and it's crazy because I just heard today he's actually I think he's getting inducted into the Benson Hall of Fame
Oh, wow.
for his career, and that's going to happen in April of this year. So, very fitting, and I would definitely be there to support him.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, my last couple of questions. When you hear the word the ripple effect or the phrase the ripple effect, what does that conjure up for you?
That creates good feelings within me because that's how I feel. That's why, in essence, I am the way I am because I feel like even if you're not around somebody for a long time, you can always have a huge influence, right? That ripple effect is real. Like but I this is how I like in my life. I'm also involved with teammates mentoring program because I want people to know that there are people who care about you, and as they see you doing good work, hopefully that good work rolls off on that person. They take it to their friends, and it just creates this pool of good energy and goodwill and vibes that are floating throughout the world. And so, I've always been a person that just paid attention to the good things that people are doing, and I think that there's just such power in goodwill and in good work. So when I met you initially and you had this thing, I was like, man, I should have came up with that. It's just because it just makes sense, man. It just makes sense. So
Uh,
I love that you have this.
I love that. I love that. Well, my last question would be, what ripples could I be looking to create for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I would just say if you have, individuals who, number one, from a, engineering standpoint, if they're looking for ways to get into the engineering field or information about UNL, please send them my way. The other
Okay.
side is if you have young athletes who are in football who are, trying to get to the next level and, may want some training, send them my way for Warren Academy. Again, this isn't anything about me. This is about, trying to get them to be the best version of themselves, and if I can help them
I
do
love
that,
that.
I would love to do that.
You bet. I will definitely send any and all your direction for sure.
I
I,
appreciate
I
it.
I lied. There was one last question. What's the
Okay.
best way for people to follow you, or how do you want them to, just keep up with what you're up to? Is there a social handle or LinkedIn that you prefer?
I am on LinkedIn, so they can look me up just by my name.
Okay.
I'm also on Facebook. Those are probably the easiest ways to to stay involved with me. I have an Instagram on there, but I can't remember what, what it is, what you just said. But I would say
We'll find it and put
LinkedIn.
it up as
Yeah,
a link or something. So
yeah. No, LinkedIn is the best way to reach out to me. Um, and I would I could give you my email as well to share if you want to do that too. But LinkedIn would probably be the best way.
okay, yeah, we'll just put your LinkedIn profile up on the show notes just so
Okay.
people have it and they can follow you that way. We definitely can't begin to thank you enough for how for you participating today. I have really been looking forward to this for a long time, and not just because you are a two-time national champion and Super Bowl champion, but because you're a good guy. You are making a difference out there in the world, and that's what I really want to highlight and profile really for all of our guests here. And I appreciate all the ripples that you're creating, not only for the University of Nebraska, but for the youth that you're committed to helping not only down the college path, but also in what you're doing for helping those college or those potential college bound athletes really understand what it's going to take to be successful at that next level. You're doing some great work, my friend. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it, and you make sure you keep this podcast going, and I think it'll just keep this stream going. I think it's amazing work that you're doing, and the chance to be able to, share the stories and the inspiration of all these people that are actually out there. I mean, you're going to make some really positive things happen. So I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. If you ever want to introduce me to your ex football coach, I'm down. That sounds like a guy I definitely need to know for sure. But I just appreciate you so much, guys. We'll be back with another episode of the Ripple Effect podcast very soon. But be sure to follow Tony. We'll have the links in the show notes. But Tony, until next time, thank you so much, and ripple on.